who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Text 76. Raja samristya samvaram imam adbhutam keshavarjunaya punyam hirjami chamahurmahu. O king, as I have repeatedly recalled this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment. Tatscha samsmritya rupam atyadbhutam hare vishmayo me maham rajan hirsyame cha punah punah. O king, when I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with even greater wonder, and I rejoice again and again. Yatra yogeshvara Krishno, yatra partho tanur daru, tara tatra sri vijayo bhuttir dhruva nitir matir mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. Thus ends the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, titled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. Wow. So in the beginning we started with text 73. Arjuna is saying some final words, and these words are for his own. He says, "I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions." So let us read the purport. Purport. The constitutional position of a living entity, represented by Arjuna, is that he has to act according to the order of the Supreme Lord. He is meant for self-discipline. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the actual position of the living entity is that of eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Forgetting this principle, the living entity becomes conditioned by material nature. But in serving the Supreme Lord, he becomes the liberated servant of God. The living entity's constitutional position is to be servitor. He either has to serve the illusory Maya or the Supreme Lord. If he serves the Supreme Lord, he is in his normal condition. But if he prefers to serve the illusory external energy, then certainly he will be in bondage. In illusion, the living entity is serving in this material world. He is bound by his lust and desires. Yet he thinks of himself as the master of the world. This is called illusion. When a person is liberated, his illusion is over, and he voluntarily surrenders unto the Supreme to act according to his desires. Prakrute kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudadma kartaham ziti manyate. This sentence in the purport, it harkens to one of the most important lessons in the Bhagavad Gita, which is earlier in the earlier chapters, 5 or 6. And Krishna is saying that the living entity who is bewildered thinks himself the doer and getting the results of his own activities, when in actuality his activities and the results are being carried out by the modes of material nature. So this sentence in the purport is reminding of Krishna's one of the main lessons, one of the key points Krishna has given. So this is called illusion. When a person is liberated, his illusion is over. And he voluntarily surrenders unto the Supreme to act according to his desires. The last illusion, the last snare of Maya to trap the living entity, is the proposition that he is God. The living entity thinks that he is no longer a conditioned soul, but God. He is so unintelligent that he does not think that if he were God, then how could he be in doubt? That he does not consider. So that is the last snare of illusion. Actually, to become free from the illusory energy is to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and agree to act according to his order. The word moha is very important in this verse. Moha refers to that which is opposed to knowledge. Actually, real knowledge is the understanding that every living being is eternally servitor of the Lord. But instead of thinking oneself in that position, the living entity thinks that he is not servant, that he is the master of this material world, for he wants to lord it over the material nature. That is his illusion. Has anyone had the experience that they, this last snare of Maya, that they were thinking themselves to be God? Raise your hand if you had that experience. So, us Westerners, the Prabhupada says in the purport that the last snare of Maya is to think that he is God. Have you had an experience where in your life you were doing some meditation or in your mind you were thinking to yourself that... Okay. So it's actually quite common, and Prabhupada is elaborating this point. I remember when I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was reading Bhagavad Gita, and I remember I was doing some austerities, and I was feeling like, my soul is like coming alive, and this was during the universal form, right? Krishna is saying that he's going through this emotional journey with Arjuna, and I was also experiencing it. And because I was a neophyte and I was just reading Bhagavad Gita by myself, I thought, "Wow, I'm God." It's like the mind is just like a child or a monkey. Right? The mind is thinking, okay, I'm having this like revelation, this spiritual experience, and God is speaking to me, and now I'm God, And so it's not really personal. Anyone who has coming to God consciousness from an impersonal background, at some point their mind is gonna become overwhelmed with this Brahman, and they're gonna think, I'm God. That is what a lot of the Mayavadis consider the ultimate liberation, and they just try to be God. It's very clearly delineated by our acharyas, like what a Mayavadi believes versus what a devotee follows, and so it's like unpacks a lot of, because we've lived many lives. Like imagine myself or Bhakta Aiden, we've come up the evolutionary chain as all different species. They teach that the soul evolves. Jai Shri Gaura Nitai Ki. We've evolved through so many lower species, right? Animal, maybe even gone up to heavenly planets, and then finally we come to Krishna consciousness, right? And it's the conclusion of all knowledge. Like, this is where we get a ticket out of this cosmic play, and we get the absolute truth coming from Krishna, who's a person, which we haven't fully accepted yet. And all of our mystic or realizations, spiritual, happen like automatically. Like they spring up from past lives, because Krishna consciousness is the quickest way. You start where you left off, and you're just, you're Dr. Joseph or you're Dr. Aiden, and you're having all these mystic experiences, and then one day, you just think, I'm God. You just think, I figured it all out, right? But then Prabhupada is saying that's the last snare of Maya. So Krishna may give you that full experience, because we as a little jiva, we've suffered so many lifetimes, and we feel this, and we feel, okay, this is what we wanted to be Krishna. That's why we're here. We had some envy. Krishna was enjoying, and we wanted to enjoy like Krishna. So then he said, okay, try to enjoy like me. I'll let you, be God, right? Be Brahma. So we fell down from the spiritual world, and we became Brahma, right? We were born, and then after we manifested, then we decided, I'm going to go through all these different types of enjoyment. It's like we wanted to make our own cake and then eat from it, right? So this, I'm glad, these devotees are so humble. They're willing to admit that they had a similar experience coming to Krishna consciousness, and not accepting Krishna yet fully as God, as the Supreme Father, the Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Samahatma Sadurlabha, the cause of all causes. He says he is the seed-giving Father, right? Krishna's tu Bhagavam Swayam, that all incarnations and manifestations come from him. That the entire material universes plus the spiritual planets are all manifested from him and because of him. It's inconceivable. So we can experience. Thank you for sharing that. So that is his illusion. This illusion can be overcome by the mercy of the Lord or by the mercy of a pure devotee. When that illusion is over, one agrees to act in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is acting according to Krishna's order. A conditioned soul, illusioned by the external energy of matter, does not know that the Supreme Lord is the Master who is full of knowledge and who is the proprietor of everything. Whatever he desires, he can bestow upon his devotees. He is the friend of everyone, and he is especially inclined to his devotee. He is the controller of this material nature and of all living entities. He is also the controller of inexhaustible time, and he is full of all opulences and all potencies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can even give himself to the devotee. One who does not know him is under the spell of illusion. He does not become a devotee, but a servitor of Maya. Arjuna, however, after hearing Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became free from all illusion. He could understand that Krishna was not only his friend, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he understood Krishna factually. So to study Bhagavad Gita is to understand Krishna factually. When a person is in full knowledge, he naturally surrenders to Krishna. When Arjuna understood that it was Krishna's plan to reduce the unnecessary increase of population, he agreed to fight according to Krishna's desire. He again took up his weapons, his arrows and bow, to fight under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, one of my favorite verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktarang yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram surdam sarva bhutani kyapvamam santam richati. So that last line, if one wants to have peace, everlasting peace, they should know three things about the Supreme Lord. That He is the beneficiary of all penances and austerities, that He is the source of all the planets and the demigods, and that He is the well-wisher of every living entity. Prabhupada says He's the Supreme Proprietor, Supreme Controller, and the Supreme Best Friend. Right? Supreme Enjoyer, Supreme Proprietor, and Supreme Best Friend. Now, why is it that Krishna is the Supreme Enjoyer? Don't we want to be the enjoyer? Don't we want to enjoy and experience what Krishna is like? So that is the common fallacy, right? A good friend of mine, his name is Nagar Kirtan. He used a contemporary reference to help us understand that even in mainstream media, movie, that this moral of not being the ultimate enjoyer is quite popular, actually. Not being the ultimate enjoyer. This movie is very well known. It's by Pixar. It's called Toy Story. So the entire movie, these toys, they come to life when their proprietor, Andy, is not around. And when this toy named Buzz Lightyear, this new toy comes, Woody, who was Andy's favorite toy, became envious. So Buzz Lightyear, who was very dutiful and he just didn't really engage with Woody. He was just focused on his dharma, you could say, to infinity and beyond. He was just seeking moksha, right? So Woody saw that his friends were attracted to Buzz Lightyear, and he started to make jokes at him, oh, he, kind of relishing his pastimes with his other toy friends. But then when they went on a trip one day, their fighting caused them to get left behind. So Andy was driving away and they're fighting. The toy, Woody and Buzz, got left behind. I'm just summarizing the movie. The only way they could salvage their friendship and be happy again was to realize Andy was the supreme enjoyer, and that their enjoyment was based on Andy's happiness. That's the whole theme of the movie. So we can understand that even as kids, we were given depictions of an example of how we, as the thinking ourselves to be the main enjoyer, how that can lead to envy, greed, and that if we serve a higher purpose, someone like they're serving Andy, a person who's really meant to, that we're living for, that we're actually more situated, and we can all be happy, and we can all get along, and we have a purpose. Is that a good example? So because we have a material body, we're limited. Our senses are limited. So it's like being in a dark well. We left something in the dark well. We dropped our wallet in the dark well. And we're going down into the dark well to grab it because we feel like that's our identity. But fortunately, we have a rope tied around our stomach. And that rope is connected to our best friend at the top of the well. This is an example of the super soul. So our best friend at the top of the well, he has a flashlight, and by his vision, we're able to see. And also, he's holding on to us so that we don't fall and die, right? So just imagine this very logical example, right? That we're in a dark well. We came down to find our identity in this dark well. The only way we can find that is to depend on our best friend who is holding on to us for dear life and has the vision. That's what it means to be in this material body. We don't have the vision, right? We don't know our identity, and we're holding on for dear life. I'm just using a very practical example because in Krishna consciousness in the West, we're trying to help people logically understand why we need God. People out there, they are enjoying because they are saying, we don't need God to enjoy, right? So we have to find ways to convince them that the enjoyment that they're seeking is impermanent, and that we're actually dependent on the supreme enjoyer, and by satisfying him, we feel enjoyment. So Prabhupada, he gives many analogies, and they're meant to really inspire devotees, help us contemplate the scenarios so that we can practically understand what it means to be Krishna conscious. This 18th chapter, it's called the perfection of renunciation. When I was in India, I took Bhakti Shastri at Govardhan Eco Village. And the way the Bhagavad Gita is arranged, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the first six chapters mainly focus on karma yoga. The middle chapters, 6 to 12, focus on bhakti, and the 13 to 18 focus on jnana yoga. The illustration he uses is like a treasure box. So the jewel of the treasure box is in between, and that's bhakti. What's covering bhakti is also decorated, ornamented. You have karma yoga and jnana yoga. So a lot of people, when they get a book, they may just read the first few pages or first few chapters and feel like, okay, I think I get it, and then they're satisfied just because they started. Or they go to the end and they read the conclusion and they say, oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it. But Krishna puts bhakti in the middle so that one can hear the whole Bhagavad Gita. So the latter 6 chapters, which focus on jnana, goes in depth with the modes of material nature, as chapter 14. nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. That's chapter 13. It goes more in depth about Sankhya philosophy. Then then it talks about the divine and demoniac natures and the divisions of faith. This is all knowledge, right? Then chapter 15 is the yoga of the Supreme Person, which is the shortest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. These chapters lead to the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. So I've recently been encouraged to read these last 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which, I'll be honest, for me, feels very heavy in terms of philosophy. Because like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the main theme is Jnana Yoga. So these chapters, at least for me, felt very philosophical and required a lot of thinking. And it also might feel repetitive, since Krishna is often bringing up the modes. He's elaborating on the modes of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And one may think that, generally speaking, they have a concept of the modes. Now, the goal when hearing Bhagavad Gita is to continue to try to become absorbed and at least if I can speak frankly, by reading these last 6 chapters and specifically trying to pray that Krishna can help me apply this knowledge. Very subtly, the ability to perceive what is necessary for my spiritual advancement is beginning to manifest. I highly recommend that if one has already read Bhagavad Gita as it is, the purpose of the Jnana Yoga is to help us remain firmly fixed in our Krishna consciousness. That's why Arjuna, before going into battle, is becoming very fixed. So the details, the modes of material nature, the divisions of faith, right? Krishna is elaborating on the qualities of the divine and demoniac natures, why there are religions, why over time humankind becomes more segregated. He's really bringing up Arjuna's anarthas, and Arjuna's a pure devotee, but because Arjuna is playing the role of a human being and is hearing Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of everyone, Arjuna's perceiving the anarthas of humankind. Just like Srila Prabhupada in the preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says there's a pinprick in the social body of human society. So the pure devotee, while he's in this human form, his desire is to satisfy Krishna by liberating the conditioned souls. So they take on this service of perceiving that pinprick or anartha, which is causing the human condition to suffer. Now Prabhupada says, just because of that pinprick, so many wars are happening, so many disagreements, so many fighting. Trinadapi sunichana, tarodapi sahisna. The straw on the street. If one is lower than the straw on the street, more humble, more as tolerant as a tree. You see, these are spiritual instructions, right? Lower than the straw on the street. When we are exposed to our anarthas, it's like having a straw in our eye, right? Jesus Christ says, before you criticize your brother, take the straw out of your eye. So we feel discomfort, and our sense of, our mind tries to find reason. So what does it mean to be lower than the straw on the street? It means that despite any sort of, despite the fact that Krishna, now that we're chanting Hare Krishna, despite the fact that I'm in pain or feeling neglected, Krishna has minimized my suffering to something which I can tolerate. And by seeing this as Krishna's mercy, I remain more humble, lower than the straw on the street. So this is Lord Brahma prays in this way, that when feeling elated, one feels that they're undeserving of that elation or happiness, that it's Krishna's mercy. And similarly, when dealing with distress, they feel satisfied that Krishna's mercy, that their sins have been reduced. So this is the equanimity that we're being asked to develop, the happiness in distress, marshras sparsis tu konteya, that after Krishna enlightens Arjuna and all the humankind for time immemorial, right after he says, Dehi no sminyata dehi, that you're the embodied soul, he says, marshras sparsis tu konteya. Okay, and I've given you the knowledge. You are now liberated by this knowledge, but you must learn how to become tolerant. If Krishna wanted to liberate everyone, he can. Instantly. Unfortunately, the common person, they would abuse that, because the soul is so powerful. Ajo nitya sasvatam mam prano. It's eternal, everlasting, primeval. The soul can manifest into 8,400,000 species. It can manifest into a form which can create planets, can cause destruction, can live 10,000 times 10,000 times just to enjoy heavenly delights. So Krishna can liberate everyone just by his desire. Unfortunately, since we're here to enjoy, exploit the material energy, there is a price we have to pay if we really want to become self-realized, if we really want to remain liberated. Right? And that price has been minimized. Trinadapi sunichana, that one can always be liberated if one remains lower than a straw in the street. So that's why our acharyas, they're emphasizing that we take to this Krishna consciousness, that we understand through practical knowledge what it means to be Krishna conscious. Mukunda Datta Maharaj, Mukunda Datta Prabhu, he's one of the most learned pundits in our Krishna consciousness movement. He said that him and his godbrother studied all of Srila Prabhupada's book with the single intention to find out what Srila Prabhupada specifically emphasized in his Western preaching that is distinct from his acharyas. 3 points that he specifically wanted to emphasize. The first point is that one has to take association, take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. The second point is that we have to avoid Mayavad philosophy. The third point is the role that men and women play in Vedic society, Vedic culture. These 3 points were emphasized in comparison to our other acharyas in disciplic succession, leading to His Divine Grace Abhaicharan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, that when he came to the West, through their reasoning and studying of all his books and purports, that these 3 points were recurring themes. So the second point of the distinction of what is Mayavad as opposed to the Krishna consciousness is something that we have to deeply think about. That is a lifeline, that we have to have knowledge. Unfortunately for us as Westerners, we never had heard of this concept of Mayavad until recently when we joined ISKCON. Now, when I was in India studying Bhakti Shastri, they have understood Mayavad very systematically. Right? In the Art of War, it says, don't go into battle unless you understand your opponent systematically, right? That you can break down your opponent before you're confronted by him. So in India, because that's the spiritual land, they've dealt with Mayavad and they can clearly delineate it. So being there, it was very insightful. In the West, we're very affected by the Mayavad philosophy, and it's so subtle, right? Prabhupada gave the example that this last snare of Maya, which the Mayavadis are constantly trying to seek out this realization that I am God. So we're trying to preach Krishna consciousness, but you have the Mayavad or Mayavad influenced living entities that are just trying to be God. It creates a very perplexing situation for devotees. So the danger of liberation without Krishna consciousness is that these persons can very easily fall victim of Mayavad philosophy. Right? So if Krishna wanted to liberate everyone, he can instantly. But many of these souls, unless they become tolerant, unless they become humble, they're going to use that liberation to try to be God. So, these Mayavads are very dangerous. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada says that though the karmis who are engaged in fruitive work, they're not as dangerous as those Mayavad speculators. Oftentimes they become offensive if you try to convince them that God is a person, you should become a servant of Krishna. They want to enjoy. They want to be Krishna. So if you tell them that Krishna is a person and we're servants of Krishna, they laugh at you, and right? So this is why being trained up in Krishna consciousness, having shelter of a spiritual master, receiving the knowledge through disciplic succession, and becoming fixed. These things are all that this is for our livelihood, so that we don't have to suffer. Raja Vidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Itam Uttamam Pradiyaksha Vagadam Dharmyam Susakam Kartams Avyayam. This is the last verse I'd like to end on. The king of all knowledge, the most secret of all secrets. This knowledge will situate one in transcendence and give direct perception of the self. Once the living entity has experienced that, they live their life joyfully, wanting to remain in that consciousness. So Krishna is promising in chapter 9, verse 2, that this is the king of all knowledge, Bhagavad Gita, that this is the most secret of all secrets. And if one deeply hears from a qualified person in Krishna consciousness, they will have the opportunity to have direct perception of the self. And once perceived, they will want to remain in that consciousness, and their actions in this world will become joyous. So, thank you guys for letting me speak on Bhagavad Gita. And if there's any thoughts or questions before we wrap up here, please contribute or chime in if you like.
So I've heard that the people who I've heard someone call themselves God, but not in a sense that they're the supreme controller and everything comes from them, and the universes come from their pores and things like that. But that as consciousness, they're God in the same sense that a piece of chocolate bar is still chocolate bar, but it's it's not the supreme chocolate bar, but it's still chocolate bar.
I'm God, you can be God. That's how the Mayavadis extend their philosophy is.
So is the snare, is that the snare, or is the snare to actually believe, like the yogi might believe, that they have some power, as the supreme controller, or is it just both of those things? Just any idea that they have?
There's a lot of ways to rationalize why we manifest that. You see, Brahmaji, there's innumerable Brahmas, because every universe has a Brahma. And Brahma is on the topmost planet. And in the creation,